Good morning. Lovely to see all of you today. Here we go again, the home stretch of the conference. It's been pretty amazing. Holy cow. Andy's talk, and then Ian had us singing Shalom, and his talk, singing Quakers. Your workshops, were they great? The workshops, people keep stopping me going, man, these workshops were amazing. Michael last night. And the jokes have been stunning. And people are just overwhelmed. I mentioned that dinosaurs make bad pets because they're dead. But I got a new horse. Very excited. Named him Mayo. Because Mayo neighs. The bar is low, Alison. The bar is low for you. Our first speaker this morning is Alison Cook. And she is a therapist and host of the top-ranked podcast, The Best of You, author of the best-selling book, also The Best of You, co-author of Boundaries for Your Soul, which I quoted from, does just amazing work. She is known as an expert at that integration of faith and psychology. She lives in two worlds. She'll talk a little bit about that. It's fascinating. She and her husband Joe are the parents of two adult children. I'm so honored that you're here with us. You've taught me so much, and I'm excited to hear her take it away this morning. So let's give a nice, warm welcome to Alison Cook.
Just incredible to be here. What a group. I want to give you all a round of applause. What an amazing, kind, thoughtful group of folks. Seriously, it's, and Jim, to gather such a group is no small thing. And as I'll set this stage for you in my talk, especially in these times, when there's a lot of divisiveness, there's a lot of othering, creating enemies. And I'm going to give you a chance today. I'm going to talk a little bit, but I'm going to give you a chance today to spend some time with your own soul. So I'm going to cue that up so you'll be thinking as I'm talking about kind of what's stirring up inside of your own soul. So I'm actually, technically, by way of introduction, what's called a psychologist of religion. So I'm a therapist. I have my therapist certification, but my actual research work, my actual official name is a psychologist of religion. And talk about divides. Back when I was studying psychology, this was 20 years ago, it's changed quite a bit, in large part thanks to this incredible group of speakers we've had today, right? Bringing the two together. But it wasn't always like that. And I remember kind of sitting in my psychology classes. You know, it's fascinating, learning statistics, learning how to study human behavior, human thought. But very little, if no, talk of the soul. You know, psyche used to mean soul. It's come to be thought of as mind. And that would bother me. That bothered me. And so I ended up shifting into a joint degree, a joint PhD in psychology and religion. And I then began to study the meaning part of things, religion, theology, what we believe, how we create meaning. And back in the day, this is me toggling between two worlds that didn't come together. There was a lot of suspicion in psychology circles about religion. And in my Christian circles, I was raised in a family of faith. There was a lot of suspicion about psychology, right? These two, they were divided, and yet I carried both within me. And I like to think of that is not novel at all. We think about Augustine, we think about Calvin, first line of his Institutes, right, that you cannot separate the self from God. Andy talked about it in her talk yesterday, that the self is a fundamental piece of this God-others-self equation. But I've always kind of lived in these divides and been fascinated by them. And when you think about the psychology, oh, I can see my power slides up there. That's cool. All right. Woohoo! I'm relaxed now. All right. That is a cool feature. Okay. Now we just need a big clock up there, too. Okay. So you think about these, now I lost my place, but you think about this psychology of religion. So what's interesting to me about it, and I want this to be really clear with us today, with what I'm going to talk about, is we don't study the what of belief as psychologists of religion. We're studying the why and the how of belief. And so in my research, for example, there's long been this documented in psychology of religion circles link between religion and prejudice. It really bothered me. I'd sit there and, this really bugs me as someone who is religious, as a Christian. And this research shows that people who tend to be more religious tend to be more prejudiced. There's all these different ways it's been studying. So for my research, what I did for my dissertation was try to tease out what do we mean. First of all, there are these measures that we use. And basically what I tried to argue is that it's not the what of what we believe that can lead to prejudice. It's the how. It's the how we hold to that belief. Now, that's a talk for another day, but essentially it gets at, can we hold what's called cognitive complexity? Can we hold cognitive complexity or soul complexity, as I'm going to walk you into today? Can we hold complexity within ourselves? Can we hold beliefs and hold convictions and also hold complexity? And so in my own personal life, in the backdrop of my own personal life, this idea that we have to, that there are divides, right? That there are divides. One of the things I learned in my research is that often when we don't hold these complexities, what do? Well, we create an enemy. We have to exile something or someone because it's a threat to a specific belief. When people ask me, I want to give you an example of this. When people ask me where I'm from, many of you have asked me this weekend where I'm from. It's the hardest question for me to answer, right? Chris got like a whole monologue driving me back and forth from the hotel. And it's because where I'm from really matters to me. Where I'm from is like, I think about it as an attachment figure, because the places that I've come from have shaped me and brought me who I am, and they've loved me. And the places where I'm from, so this is a picture. Basically, I took this picture from a hike, a family walk. We take hikes in Wyoming. I grew up 20 years, born and raised, small town of Wyoming, not Jackson Hole. It's important for me to say that. This is not the Tetons. These are these undiscovered mountains near where I grew up, and I'm not going to give you the name because we don't want people to discover them. You can come visit, but keep going to Jackson Hole, okay? All right. Anyway, we got that clear. All right. So this is a place that shaped me. These mountains shaped me. They loved me well. Went off to college in New England, spent most of the next 20 years where I raised my family in Boston, Massachusetts. Woo, Boston represent. I was going to bring up Tom Brady, but I realized we're in Patrick Mahomes land, so I won't. Boston shaped me. New England, very different culture. Very different culture. I mean, maybe one of the most different cultures. Maybe not, but very different culture. Not just, but there are things about Boston that, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Amy Poehler, to name a few, right? This is a city that has shaped us, right? So, and there some dear friends texted me this week from Boston, people who have shaped me. And I love this place. It's become an attachment figure to me. And in 2020, my family and I, as a result of the pandemic, ended up back in Wyoming, where I'm from, where we have family and roots and a cabin. And it was the pandemic, and it's a lot better to be, I can't go backwards, can I? Here in a pandemic than here. And so we noticed, and this is when it started for me, this whole divides thing again. we sat around our table in 2020. Our kids were in college remotely. They were in New England colleges, but we were all in Wyoming remote. And we realized, literally, this wasn't just a feeling. We looked it up statistically. We had gone from the bluest state in the country to the reddest, literally. Literally, if you look up the statistics of that year about the way people voted. And we were going, man, for me personally, these are communities who have loved me and who I love. And these reflect my own soul patterns, right? And these divides just felt crushing to me. Now, this is not a political statement. This is a psychological statement, right? This is a statement about how my psyche responds to some of the divisiveness today. It's different for all of us, right? How we deal with these systems of belief around us and how they land on our own psyches. But what's been so hard for me, whether it was psychology and religion, whether it's been right now these two different cultures, and I know you guys have this too, within one culture, right? You see these divides in your families sometimes, right? You see them in your faith communities. You see them with your friends. And it's like, how do we deal with complexity? How do we deal with complexity and without creating an enemy? And it's been something that, because of the way that my own soul was shaped in my own family, all this goes back to my own family, where so often when there was differences, there had to be an enemy, a bad guy and a good guy and an other. And sometimes there are bad guys and good guys, but in general, when there's complexity, how do we deal with that? And so I want to read to you, I'm going to read just a portion of this, but I'll put it up on the screen. I think this parable of the Good Samaritan is, and I'm going to bring it into our inner lives. I'm going to take a different spin on it. Most of us know this story, but I heard it read in church, and one of the interesting things about living in two such different places is when you hear a parable of Jesus, I think to myself, oh, this would track so differently in Wyoming in a church than it would in Boston in a church. Because the enemy's different. And it forces you to kind of wrestle with that. And so I'm really grateful for that experience. But if you can read it on the board, but essentially, Jesus, the man asks, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? Who is this person that I have to love? And Jesus tells the story of the man going down the road, and he comes across a guy who's been wounded and sitting by the side of the road, and the religious leaders pass by, and then the Samaritan comes along, and the Samaritan is the one who stops and helps the wounded person, the person who's been hurt, beside the road. And Jesus says, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? And the guy says, the one who had mercy. And Jesus says, go and do likewise. So there's a bunch of different levels of this reading. I think the first level is this idea that the enemy is the hero in the story. Because if you know the context, and if you think about the cultural context of the time, right, we know that the man asking Jesus, who is my neighbor, to him, the Samaritan would have been the enemy. So it would have been like if Jesus came to one of us, and if we said to Jesus, who is this neighbor? Who is this person I have to love? Jesus picks the person you like the least as the hero of the story, right? And so that's the first level, is like, ouch, that person that I've decided is not a good person. You're telling me that that person has some characteristics that I need to emulate, right? So that's part of it. The other part, this is actually a side note, but I think it's interesting, is sometimes I think about what if we're the wounded one in the story. This says a lot about our souls, about my soul. And Jesus says that person that you have deemed or you don't like or that bothers you or is an other inside you, they're the ones that are going to help you. How does that feel to our souls? That stirs up a lot inside of me. I don't want, I'm pretty good. I'll be nice to everybody, but I don't want that person helping me, right? I'm better than that. That's what's hard for my soul. And this is where I think this parable gets interesting and where it leads to this work that I do in internal family systems. And that is this. I think these parables of Jesus, these stories that he told, and I'm going to take some creative license with it here, but I think we're allowed to do that because they are stories. I think what's beautiful and incredible is that, in fact, all of these characters in the story reside in our own souls. We're all of the characters in the story. And I refer here to the work of Dr. Richard Schwartz, who is just a profound trailblazer. And he created this model of therapy called internal family systems. How many of you are familiar with IFS? A lot of you, right? If you saw the Pixar movie Inside Out, right? That is a very good depiction of the internal family systems model. And Dr. Schwartz was a family systems therapist initially, which means he worked with families. And when you work with a family, we all have families, the goal of a healthy family is one word, and it's harmony. Now, that's a nice sounding word, but imagine a middle school band. And your job is to create harmony in that middle school band. God bless middle school band and orchestra conductors. My own was amazing, and I to this day, when I see him, oh, Mr. McKnight, I'm so sorry. The goal is harmony. And when you look at this orchestra, to create harmony out of all of those pieces, it's really hard. It takes a lot of work. Harmony is a nice sounding word. I tried to Google images of harmony for this, and you know what you get? You get these like, no, sort of like, and I'm like, harmony is complicated. Harmony has a lot of parts to it that have to harmonize. It's not a quick fix. It's not an absence of noise. It's a bringing together of different voices, right? And so when we do that in a family, harmony in a family, it takes some work. It takes some rhythms. It takes some practice. It takes some attuning. Sometimes we pull a kid in closer because they need more of our attention, right? But sometimes we need to make sure that one kid isn't getting too much of our attention because this other one's getting lost, right? We're constantly kind of create a sort of happy chaos, at least, if not harmony, right? And what Dr. Schwartz realized is that's the same systems in our country that are polarized, systems in a family, we get polarized, start to fight against each other versus working, is the same system that exists within our souls. We have an inner system, and I love this because it maps the idea of the Trinity. God, in God's self, is a relationship. There's a relational component to God, God, Father, Holy Spirit, right? There's an inner relationship among one. We are made in God's image. So when we relate to self, it's not just this static self, it's this whole inner orchestra, right? A whole inner symphony. Sometimes it's really discordant, and sometimes there's some harmony. And these three characters from this parable of the Good Samaritan, I'm going to do a time check. How long do I have, Jim? Okay, because I really want to get to these three characters in the parable represent the three characters inside of our souls. We all have a part of us that is like that religious leader. I know I do. I don't want to, but I'm too busy doing my good things for God to stop where I need to stop. It might look differently for different people, right? It might be that part of you that oftentimes, I always map it on the Enneagram wheel, right? The part of us that perfects, the part of us that is too busy pleasing everybody that we're missing the one thing that needs us most. But it's that part of us that's too preoccupied with this good that we're trying to do that we're missing the wound right in front of us. But here's the thing, we also all have that wounded one. We are also all have a part of us that is the one in need of care, that is the one in need of someone stopping and saying, are you okay? And those two parts of us are often at odds with each other in our soul. But there's also a third part of us, and this is the one that is often our inner enemy. It's the one we don't like the most. It's the one that essentially comes in and mediates between the pain that we feel and the relief that we need, and that this other working part of us won't let us have, right? And so often when we're not in touch with what we perceive as that inner enemy, that shadow part of us, that part of us that is trying to find relief, what does it do? It's the part of us that numbs us out, right? It just shuts the whole thing down with TikTok videos or with booze or with whatever, right? It's the part of us that drives us crazy. We can't get it to stop. Because what really is going on, though, is that we're trying over here to do our hard work achieving, and there's a wounded part of us that needs our attention. Now, here's what it's interesting when I map this onto the parable of the Good Samaritan. What if this inner enemy, this part of us that we feel like is our enemy, is the hero of our souls? And in my own life, actually, let's go to Eugene Peterson before we go to me. I love how Eugene translates the scripture about loving your enemy. He says, when someone gives you a hard time, respond with the energies of prayer, for then you are working out of your true selves, your God-created selves. And I think about this inner enemy. And so in my life, my inner enemy, this part of me that I've come to realize when I'm hurting and I'm overperforming, what it comes in to do, what that part of me is it's what I call my inner eviscerator. It's not just an inner critic. It's mean. It's vicious. And it's been my enemy for a long time, since I was a kid, and just eviscerated myself in my journals, cutting the paper, right? Psychological cutting, right? And it just is this part of me that's like, what do I do with this? It's so painful. And as I have learned to attune to this part of me and bring the energies of prayer to this part of me and show, as Andy taught us so well, compassionate attention to this part of me, as Ian teaches in The Fix, how we all have this part of us, right, that we hate on one hand, this part of us transforms. And I've seen it in my own life. And this part of me, even this morning, when we're singing praise music, will now come in and go, you're doing a good job, right? Because it's the part of me that actually cares, that actually has great passion, that actually wants to help others and wants to be attentive to myself, doesn't always know how to do it, and so it's just easier to beat me up, right? We all have a part of us like that, and here's what I want you to hear me say today. That part of you has the potential to become the hero of your soul. It needs your care, and it needs God's attention. I love Henry Nouwen. Henry Nouwen knew the kind of demons, you might say, of his own soul, and he would talk about how these parts of us need to be reclaimed. They need to be brought back into relationship. Richard Rohr talks about it this way too, that we have to integrate this part of us, not so that it keeps on using that same old strategy. That's not what we want, but so that it gets integrated in our soul. I had a client that illustrates this beautifully. Her name was, I'll change her name, but we call her Tara. She was a woman I worked with in Boston, and this tough woman. I worked at a low-income agency where people were coming in. Many of them were homeless, and and kind of having a rough time in life. And she'd been in prison for years, and she'd been convicted of 17 assaults, right? And she was this wiry little tough lady, and I loved her. I saw her every Thursday for about 4 years. She never missed an appointment. Half the time she didn't have a place to sleep. And she was the kindest, most deeply feeling person I'd ever met. And I said to her once, I said, how did you go from being someone who'd been convicted of 17 assaults to this person? She rescued dogs. That was her love. And she said, well, she looked at me and she said, there's energy in that. Right? There's energy. All that took energy to hate others. And I just figured out how to convert the energy to love. And that's a lot of energy. Right? Oh, she was my teacher, right? If she can do that, maybe I can do that inside my own soul. And so I want to now, with the few minutes that we have remaining, I want to kind of turn the attention onto you. I'm not going to ask you to say anything, but I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for a minute. And I want you to take a moment and imagine a person who has felt like an enemy. Don't pick your most extreme example for today's purposes, but someone who tweaks you or irritates you or causes those feelings in your soul that you don't like, resentment or bitterness or even envy sometimes. This is what we call taking a U-turn. And I want you to now shift your attention off of that person and onto the feelings that person brings up in you. And just notice what that is. Is it hurt? Is it resentment? Is it annoyance? Feeling of I just don't like them? And just notice that part of you. And then I want you to notice how you feel toward that part of you having those feelings. Are you critical of yourself? Are you skeptical? And what would it be like to show compassion toward the part of you who feels the hurt, the anger, the resentment, even the hate? You're connecting to a place inside your own soul. There's a reason you don't like this other person. It connects to a place within you. And now invite God to be with you as you notice this part of you. Not to remove it, but to be with you in it. And notice how this part of you feels toward God. Not all parts like God. Some do. Notice how you sense God is toward this part of you. Are there any fears this part of you has if it were to shift or change or to stop working so hard in this way inside your soul? What fears does this part of you have? How old does this part of you feel? Are there other times when it's felt this same way? Just bear witness to the story that this part of you carries. This part of you that maybe has been a thorn in your side, but is in need of your attention. Maybe take a moment to express appreciation for this part of you. If you're able, you may even want to extend it a medal of honor for how hard it's worked. Maybe you haven't always loved its strategies, but it's there for a reason. It's trying to protect you. And just take a few moments and notice what it feels like to be connected to this part of you with compassion and not judgment, in the presence of God. And if you're open to it, if this part of you is open to it, see if there's a quality of God's Spirit that it would like to receive. Might be kindness, gentleness, peace, patience. It might be courage. Sometimes parts that have been hurt need the courage to stand up and protect, do justice. And then just set an intention that you'll check back in with this place inside your soul later today or tomorrow, that you want to learn more about it. You want to be a good shepherd of it. You don't want it to continue in this same way, but you want to help it become a really vital, vibrant member of your own soul. And then when you're ready, you can turn your attention back to the room. We don't often attune to these different places inside our souls. I like to think of this work a little bit like a surgeon's work, where we kind of know these things in our heads, but a surgeon goes in and gets to the precise spot where there's a wound, where there's a need, where there's something that needs surgical attention, right? We're surgeons of our own souls in this way. We find that place inside of us, almost always triggered by someone outside of us, right? Almost always when someone outside of us does something. And I'm not saying that they don't do bad things, right? But what I am saying is almost always when someone outside of us triggers us, there's a part of us first that needs our attention. Because the thing is when we try to exile that, I shouldn't feel this way, all that does is shove that away into a quiet corner of our soul where that part of us never gets our care, and it just festers there, festers. And it becomes an enemy, but it also spills that sideways on to other people. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing in our families, in our relationships, in our nation, right? It's a lot of these inner enemies going sideways and projecting out there. The way that we build new, kind of healthy, vibrant souls that work a little bit more like that orchestra than that middle school band is we have to be like that inner conductor, noticing, there's a part of me there. I need to pay attention to that. I need to get curious about that. And as you do this work daily, it's part of spiritual formation. This is not just therapy. This is part of spiritual formation. We begin to have this vibrant, vital inner soul where we can say, a part of me is fearful. A part of me is anxious. A part of me is really annoyed and irritated. But none of those parts is running the whole soul, right? They're just creating nuance and texture and voices. And so as you consider your enemies out there, right, the people that are hard for you, the people that you might not like, what might it be like to learn when you notice that, how to tune inwardly in here? And I think about, I forgot to pull that slide up, but that's a good one. We couldn't stop there. the part of you that you've rejected, hated, even begged God to remove may hold your greatest power to care, to advocate, and to love. I think about, to close here, this invitation that we see in Psalm 23, where, there's a lot of ways to look at this psalm, and I think it's a beautiful one, where David writes that God prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemies. What does that mean? I mean, that's, wow. There's so many ways to look at that. But as I've thought about it, and as Kim and I wrote about it in Boundaries for Your Soul, we thought, what would it be like if we could create a table and feast at a table, even amidst the enemies of our own souls? Just have a conversation, sitting at the table of our own souls with God. That one over there, we could. But you know what? Over time, as you do that, as you get to know the contents of your soul, those enemies become friends, right? They become friends. And through that friendship that you have with those parts of yourselves, you are so much more capable to bring real love to the people in your life, to the people outside of you. And I like to think of this, you begin to bear spiritual fruit. So often we think of bearing spiritual fruit as first and foremost about other people. But as those parts of you begin to receive the kindness of God, the gentleness of God, the love of God, it's from that place of overflow that we light up the rooms around us. Thank you. That's the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you. I want to turn toward you.
Okay.
There we go. Okay.
There we go. Yes, I've been calling you to other people. I say, Alison is the ambassador of my allies.
Oh.
Because it's like alliteration.
Wow, that is.
Alison, ambassador, allies.
That's good.
It helps me remember, that's what you do so well. I think the first thing I just want to ask is, did you really not know that your slides were on the back
I did.
screen? Did you?
I might have known it here.
Okay.
But it clicked in a moment. I was so excited about that.
You were very excited.
I was.
And I don't want to shame you,
Yeah.
but I am shocked that it took you 5 minutes. That you, that what we were seeing,
There's this thing, Jim, called the head
yes,
body divide.
yes, yours was divided.
And mine are like this. There's one here and one here.
Yes.
And when they click in, it's a miracle.
Yes.
A miracle.
And we watched the miracle happen.
We did. You guys
with
saw
your
it.
enthusiasm.
It doesn't happen that often.
I thought it was Christmas Day for you. I thought, my slides are there.
Fair. Valid.
Deep stuff. Holding the complexities without creating the enemies.
Yeah. Oof.
That's hard.
Yeah.
And it's so challenging, I think, because of, Kurt talks about how our survival stories, they can't just be kind of neutral. We need a bad guy.
Yeah.
Because we're looking out for the threat.
Yeah.
And something inside just, that bubbles up. And you touched on, obviously, a cultural moment that we're feeling. And it feels like in the last year, particularly with social media and the news, like to engage is to enrage.
Yes.
Like these algorithms are built to create the threats and so forth. How do you, let's get a little personal if that's okay.
Yeah.
How do you personally work with social media, work with the news? How do you do it? Because I've been trying.
Yeah.
I have some thoughts. I'm not succeeding, but how do you do it?
I want to say, first, what you touched on, blame is important, but blame is not the end game.
Okay.
And I want to say that because, especially when we're talking about abuse and wrongs, it is important to sometimes there is a person here to blame. Something wrong happened. Okay. We just don't want to stay there. Yeah. So we want to come to what's the constructive thing I can do about it. With social media, oh boy, okay. I do see it as a big part of the problem because it oversimplifies. And what I notice in my own life is in my real life, and I'm sure this is true for many of you, we can exist within differences pretty meaningfully. It's hard at times, but we have to in families, in church communities, in communities. But that doesn't happen online. The nuance of what it takes to exist in complexity doesn't happen online. And so you just see these streams of outrage. And so one thing I do very personally is I very consciously, I'm very intentional about taking in media from different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I kind of do it as a mental exercise to look for places I agree and places I differ. Because that kind of helps me always be able to go, oh, there's a good point. Oh, there's a good point. Yeah. And that kind of I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's for everybody. For some people, you just kind of stay away from it and you put those filters on strong.
Yeah, that's very hard, isn't it? Yeah, that's something my wife and I decided to do this year, is to take in different news sources and then we'll talk afterwards about, well, it's interesting that they didn't cover that story at all, or they covered that story in that way. And it is interesting, so it's nice that we can have the discussion afterwards to kind of see what were you hearing. But it's harder. Yeah.
It's hard.
It's just easier, just tell me.
Yeah.
Who am I mad at, And then and let's just get right at it.
Who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? I know. It is easier.
I love the exercise, and I feel that in your books, and when I listen to you, you have a nice way of moving us away from, okay, let's name the feeling. And so you were asking us, what feelings does this elicit, this particular person? And then you said, does it hurt? But I thought you said, is it Kurt? And I went, I'm not mad at him. Oh, she said hurt.
Oh.
Not Kurt.
That was a Freudian
Because for a minute I thought, should I be mad at Kurt? I don't know. But
Kurt does that for a lot of us.
He does.
Just kidding. Kurt is.
Yeah, he does not do that.
Not do that.
But that movement that happens is you're moving us into this place where I'm now moving into that feeling that it's eliciting, and then you're asking me to look at the history, and it just kind of it disarms the whole thing.
Yeah.
And gives me a space now to begin thinking about what my perceived enemy, what's really happening
inside of you.
Yeah.
It's called, the fancy term for it is it's called intrapsychic differentiation. So interpersonal differentiation, most of us know about, this idea that you are not me, I am not you. And it's baseline in families, right? We have to understand that our children, my child is not me, is a different being. And so when we get enmeshed, we get blended. And the same phenomena happens inside our souls, right? We are differentiating from the part, which allows us to go, this is not all of me, it's a part of me. It could be anxious, it could be an anxious part, it could be a sad part. And when we differentiate from it, we're not exiling it, we're actually seeing it better.
Yeah.
I get, that's where that came. I remember that moment where that kicked in second grade when someone bullied me or whatever.
Yeah.
You differentiate from that part, not to separate yourself from it, but to actually bring you closer. That's the dance of autonomy and connectedness.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's very powerful when you can do that within your own soul.
Yeah. And you do that so well. And I was also thinking about when you moved with Matthew 5 and Eugene's translation about, loving your enemies. And I was thinking that in Christian spiritual formation, when CSF, we just call it that because we love acronyms, but CSF and therapy and soul care, sometimes they don't do either one. Like in the church, sometimes, like I teach a class it's just on the Sermon on the Mount. The whole class, it's an upper level class. The students don't know it's on the Sermon on the Mount because I don't think they'd sign up. Because the Sermon on the Mount's like, that's really hard.
Hard.
The whole thing is hard. I can't lust, I can't lie, I can't be angry, I can't retaliate. Gotta love these people. So we don't tell them this is what the class is about. But Christian spiritual formation at its best is saying, we're gonna teach this, how to love you. And I love that also in the world of therapy and what you're doing, you are saying, we wanna help you love the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's just so hard. But I love how the two at their best are working together to get at that same thing. Because I don't often think, I'm going to go do therapy so I can love my enemy. Or I'm going to become a Christian so I can love my enemy. But that's the point. Like, I mean, ultimately, like, that's the litmus test.
Yeah, they're getting at the same, the overlaps. I had this conversation actually, I think with John Mark Comer. I think you had him here, but like, where are those overlaps are really hard to completely untangle between, because they are all, I believe therapy is a form of spiritual formation. It's just a specific form of it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all, yeah. And that also, well, I have to go here. So, managers, firefighters, exiles.
Yes.
So good. You know, it's like when you see it, you can't unsee it. So now I'm like, oh, there's my manager. Firefighters talking now.
Yeah.
And exiles, I need to. But then boundaries for your soul, right?
Yeah.
What it's about is, it's not just acknowledging, but what you do so beautifully say, we're not just going to acknowledge. First, we have to acknowledge, right? We have to acknowledge, no. But then, well, why am you wrote the book. Why am I telling you your book? So, but how does the boundaries work?
How do the boundaries?
How do the boundaries work for these inner allies?
Yeah, so boundaries in real life are part of God's design. If you think of a family again, and we talk about, boundaries are inherent. So oftentimes we think of boundaries as something we got to do when someone is annoying to us, or we think of it as a negative. Boundaries are just baseline of, and again, if you think about a family, the boundaries are what keep us from becoming enmeshed. It's that differentiation, right? And so boundaries in our soul is the same thing. So this part of me that I don't really like, my inner eviscerator, when we're talking about healthy boundaries for the soul, it's connection and containment. This is all kind of attachment stuff, right? It's connecting to and then containing. Because I don't want that to run roughshod over my soul. I want there to be some containment.
Right.
But through the connection and the containment, the part transforms. It's the exact same principle as we think about parenting, right? Think about your own kids, right? They're doing something you don't want them to do. You've got to connect and contain. That's where the boundaries come in.
Yeah. Connect and,
Yeah, and that's where in your own soul you begin to experience sort of this trust, where it's not so laborious to kind of do, when you start this work in therapy or whatever, it's kind of laborious. You're really kind of getting in there if you've never done it. But over time, you build this trust where there's an organic nature to, these parts of me kind of know their boundary lines.
Yeah.
Last night there was a part of me that knew its boundary lines and was like, I got to go home because I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Whereas I would have pushed through that harder before.
Yeah. I like that. And you talk about inviting the Holy Spirit to be with those parts. So let's just take one. So the manager in me will often just get after it. Like, we're going to organize and we're going to manage. We're going to make it. How do you bring the Holy Spirit to the manager?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I did the guided, so for those of you who haven't read the book, the manager is what I was saying when I was talking about kind of the religious leader inside your soul, the striving one. The managers are the ones who want to prevent pain. So they want to keep us looking good out to the world. And they have a good role. But they overtake us to where we don't know how to then say, I'm here and I'm present, and a part of me is also lonely, and a part of me is also grieving, right? They take us over. And so where God comes in, when I did that exercise, you connect to the part. Okay, there's that, there's that driven part of me that I love and parts of me hate. And then you invite God. Almost I look at, don't quote me on this theologically, but I almost look at God as a co-parent. Right? I'm the agent of the connection. I have the agency because of my prefrontal cortex that allows me to become aware of the part. And then I invite God in, right? And God's presence kind of provides that, even more of that awareness of what needs, I really think about it in those parenting terms. Yeah. Right? And then we're partnering with the Holy Spirit. We're partnering. We have a job to play. We have some agency, right? And the Holy Spirit comes in to give us the wisdom and the actual healing power to begin to help that part find its healthy boundary lines, its healthy role within the soul. Now, some parts, what gets really interesting, and I always try to give this caveat, don't like God. And that's okay too, meaning we just want to know that. We're getting curious. We don't have an agenda. It's like a driven part, or, for me, those really, they're like, they kind of feel like the godlike part in our soul,
Yeah.
Like, I'm the one who gets stuff done around here, not God.
Mm-hmm.
That we feel that way, right? That's a part of us. And so that we just, okay, let's just kind of sit with that for a second, right? And I'm going to contain that. I'm not going to force anything. And we start to kind of see how different parts of us relate to God.
Yeah, I love it. One of the things that runs through all of your work, all of the Fab Five, is a kind of gentleness.
Yeah, that's
and I love that because when this conference was kind of being put together, I had this nightmare that I would go into my office where all of you guys can congregate, and I would walk in and there would be a couch, and you guys would make me lie down.
We're going to do it. You just don't know. We've got an intervention planned.
And Kurt would start doing this to his face. And then Ian would say, "Tell me about your mother." And it was frightening.
I can't wait. This is going to be fun.
This is not, no.
We're going to do it.
It was a nightmare. It was not a good dream.
Let's do it.
Yeah. No, let's not do it. But
right here. I was going to say right here.
Yes. Let's get the couch out right now, guys. Come on up. You're enjoying this more than you should, I feel. I'm not shaming you. I'm just saying.
It's just, we love what we do.
Yeah. I see why. You're not on the couch. But anyway, no. So I was thinking also about this conference that I don't think 10 years ago we would have done this
Interesting.
conference. And there's been this shift on both sides in the sense that I think the church is more welcoming to therapy.
Yeah.
And I think therapy, thanks to people like you, people that are really trained, the top of the game, people who are integrating.
Yeah.
So this is happening. This conference is an example. Where do you see maybe the future? If you could look ahead, if this is happening, what?
That's a great question. I really think therapy is a form of spiritual formation. I don't know how best to say it and so I think I don't know exactly what it looks like tactically, but the thing that I see in my mind is we're all kind of trying to find different ways to care for souls. Mm-hmm. And these are all different tools to care for souls. Right. And we emphasize different things. But I think this language that those of us who've been on the panel today, I would imagine are very relevant to church communities, and not that every church community needs to become a therapist, right? But that when the language comes in, it shifts things in the community. It's sort of an understanding of that we don't want to exile parts of us. We want to redeem parts of us. When we have an understanding of trauma, when these come into our faith spaces, it enriches, it gives texture, it expands. It doesn't replace.
Yeah. But it's a part of that whole thing.
I think it's a part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing because the stigma of therapy is going down amongst Christians. And then, and Kurt was just at the AACC, good acronyms, American Academy of Christian Counselors, close. Yeah, he said there were 7,000 people.
I know,
7,000 Christian. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I was overjoyed when I heard that. Yeah. So I think something's happening. We don't have a crystal ball, but I think something wonderful's happening.
I will say often to people also, I don't like to see therapy become a replacement for faith communities. It's not.
Right. No, it's not
It's not. It's we need to be in communities, in embodied spaces.
Right.
And so when therapy becomes, that's also, we need the church spaces to kind of understand the language of the psyche.
Right.
Because the psyche is what comes to church. The soul is what comes to church. So we need to understand the soul. Yeah. I think my Catholic brothers and sisters often have a very robust anthropology of the soul that sometimes Protestant denominations have not understood as well, which is, I think, what a lot of us are trying to speak into. That these two things go hand in hand, right? And I also see in culture another side of things where therapy kind of becomes the priest and the pastor and the end game. And I don't think that's healthy for souls. We have to be in community with one another in faith communities. And so I don't have the solution, but those are some of the things that I see.
Yeah, we don't know, but I love seeing the coming together.
Yes.
And again, you guys represent such important voices, teachings, because you're trained in this.
Yeah.
You have research and study behind it. You're not just making it up.
Yeah.
You know, it's deeply embedded in that. Alison, thank you for your work. Thank you for your books. Thank you for being here. Let's give thanks to Alison Cook.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.